And joining me now is Bart Gellman, staff writer for The Atlantic, author of that incredibly reported and frightening piece, The Election That Could Break America. It's a great piece of work, Bart. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, here's what I think we should zero in on. You hear these people say, well, Trump's not going to leave if he loses. And my thinking was, no, if he loses, he will leave. He will be kicked out of the White House on Inauguration Day, January 20th. But what you're describing is actually a plan to essentially use the rules and the jockeying around them to create a plausible legal victory in the absence of an actual popular one. And it starts on election night. Let's talk about the sort of plan around an anticipation that election night, the votes are kind of polarized along in-person mail-in voting. What does that do? What does that start to set in motion in terms of the plan the Trump folks have?
So Trump has deliberately polarized. That's an insight I didn't come to until very recently. His comments on mail-in voting, Chris, are designed to drive his votes to the polls in person, and Democratic votes to stay in the mail-in ballot to be safe from COVID. And that gives him a proxy so that his lawyers, the probably more than 1,000 lawyers he's got lined up to go in the battleground states beginning on Election Day, or beginning months ago because they've been fighting this out all year, they know which ballots to target. They know which ones to accuse of being fraudulent. They know which ones to challenge, signature by signature and envelope by envelope. And the idea is to freeze the count in place on election night. It's never going to get better for Trump than on election night because that is when he is expecting his voters to turn out and many Democratic voters yet to be counted. So the idea is to freeze that in place, to raise accusations of fraud and rigging and general chaos, to go into court, but basically to delay any period during which Biden could be coming back, or to delay any recognition that Biden is ahead. This is all assuming that things don't go well for him, Chris. I mean, as you pointed out, he could win. He could win legit. But his plan is the plan of someone who does not expect to get the most votes.
I guess one question, right, is there are different rules in different states, and this matters quite a bit about when those ballots are counted, when they're allowed to be counted. In fact, there's been a little bit of Republican mischief around that in those states, intentionally intervening to make them not counted, to make it illegal to start counting them before Election Day. Am I right about that?
That is right. There have been a number of lawsuits around the country that lead to the question. You've got a whole bunch of mail ballots that have come in. They're stacking up in the offices. Are you allowed to start comparing signatures? Are you allowed to say, yes, John Doe requested a ballot. Here is the ballot. The signature matches, the address matches, all the checks they're supposed to do. And then they put the inner security envelope, which has the ballot, the actual vote in it, into a place where it will be counted on Election Day. But it's a laborious process, and if you can do that pre-processing before Election Day, then you have a chance of having same-day results. Many states don't allow that.
Some states do. I think Arizona does, if I'm not mistaken. Florida does, which is key, and that's why Florida ends up being key, because they count pretty quickly, and because they allow that, that process starts as the ballots are coming in. I know this is technical, but think about this, right? Like when we're talking about the two stacks, right? There's some states where there's two stacks, and there's some states where there's essentially one stack, right? And the states where there's one stack are the ones where the mail-in votes are coming. You're opening them. You're saying, oh, this person's a voter. It goes in the same stack as the same-day votes, right? And Florida is one of those states. It's part of the reason that Florida closing fairly early and counting quickly is so key. Now, let's talk about this idea of that timeline, right? Because I think people need to think about this. Obviously, there's a lot of people on the other side thinking about this, Mark Elias and others. There's basically the Constitution and statute, right, creates a deadline for states to appoint their electors in December 8th. Is that correct?
Right. So December 14th is the day the electors meet in their 50 state capitals and cast their ballots. Popular misconception aside, the Electoral College itself does not meet as a body.
Right.
That's December 14th. December 8th is called the safe harbor date. That is the deadline for each state to appoint its electors to certify these are the electors who are going to cast our votes. And after that deadline, they can't be sure that Congress will accept the credentials of those electors. As long as there is no controversy about who the electors are on December 8th, then Congress respects the state's designation of electors. If there is a controversy, and this is going to be key in our story here, then it's Congress that decides. If there's more than one slate of electors, for example, or if there's controversy about who counts, then Congress decides which electors, if any, to accept. And that's the key to the Trump plan.
And that was key to the reporting here, because I have thought about the scenario for a long time because it's in the Constitution and if you sort of game it out. But you have, I mean, I think that the chair of the Republican Party is on the record in your story saying he's discussed this. You've got sources close to the Republican Party in Pennsylvania saying, yeah, we're talking about, and it's 1 + 1 = 2, right? If you can get enough lawsuits that you delay, and then it's December 6th or 7th, you say, oh man, well, we haven't counted yet. We have to send our electors in. And it's a big mess. The Republican state legislature of Pennsylvania selects Donald Trump electors to the state of Pennsylvania. Here you go.
Right, so you have to rewind a little bit. It's in the Constitution.
Yes.
That state legislators can appoint electors for president in any manner they choose. And the Supreme Court ruled in Bush v. Gore in 2000 that state legislators can take back that power from the people anytime they want. So we're accustomed to voting by popular vote for who's going to represent our state as state electors, but the Constitution doesn't guarantee that. And the idea that some Trump people are discussing, I'm not saying they have a plan to do it, but I know that it is coming up, and they have discussed it also with the Republican Party in Pennsylvania, a crucial swing state, is that they would ask Republican legislators who control both chambers in Pennsylvania, and in fact in all 6 of the most closely contested battleground states, to name Trump-friendly electors, notwithstanding the popular vote, regardless of the popular vote, that it will be a claim that the count isn't finished, or that it was corrupt, or that it was rigged, or that there are still legal disputes, and so just appoint some Trump people.
We should say that Mark Caputo, Politico, got some on-the-record comments from political state reps in Florida today saying, no, we won't do that, which was good. It's good to have that on the record, although...
Get him on record.
Yeah, of course. Joni Ernst was also saying there's no way we're going to confirm a justice in election year, so, like, take that for what it's worth. All right, Bart Gellman, thank you so much. The piece is available in Atlantic. People should read it. Again, in the same way when I spoke to you in late February about the virus, we should just be clear-eyed about what the possibilities of the future are. So thank you, Bart. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.